Hello, everybody. Sorry for that few-minute delay. Pru and I have been working really hard on the technology, but yet we still came across a couple of issues when we were here. So thank you so much for joining us. This is very exciting today for both myself and Pru, really. Myself and Heidi from Riverside do lots of our live tutorials, but it's very exciting to welcome Pru to us today. Pru and I work together over many years. You'll often see us at events together, and Pru very kindly, when we're able to, comes down and does workshops here at Riverside as well, in-person ones when those things happened. So it's been lovely to work with Pru over the years, and very excitingly, we can now hopefully bring this soon to you. So Pru and I are just working on the technology side of it, and I am just going to try and introduce Pru. So give me a moment. We are nearly there. Pru, I hope I'm asking on the right one to get you invited there. And just give me a moment to switch this over. Hopefully, we will get Pru over to you in a moment. I'm going to leave you in Pru's very capable hands. Have I got you there, Pru?
You have indeed. Hi, Donna. Hi, everyone.
Welcome. So if I pop, hopefully you can see Pru, and I shall put myself on mute unless Pru needs me for anything, and I'll be here to answer any questions as well. So thank you so much, Pru, and enjoy, everybody.
Thank you, Donna. Okay, well, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here. And this is a bit of a trial, so bear with us, obviously. But what my main aim today is to answer the question that I'm asked so often, which is, what's the difference between the Prumihimo disc and regular Kumihimo discs? And I guess that can be answered in three different ways. It's about the history of it, really. It's also about the structure of it. And it's also about the application, what you can do with it. So what I'm going to do is just work through those things. And hopefully by the end of it, you'll know exactly what the Prumihimo disc and how it differs. But what I'm going to just take a little look at here, see who's here and say hi to a few people. So hi, Lisa. Hi, Claire. Hi, Helen. Hi, Sheila. Hi, Fiona. Hi, Julie. Hi, Di. Gosh, so many of you. It's absolutely fantastic. Hi, Maria. Preeti, lovely to have you here as well. Helen, Trisha, Christine, Becky, Sandra, Philida, Liz, Darlene, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you're able to see everything here and it's all working for you. The Prumihimo disc then. So I'm going to start with the history of it, really. What is it? And it's based on a traditional braid structure. So I didn't make up this braid. It's a traditional braid structure that I tweaked and worked out my own system for. So with this sort of disc, you can make a multitude of different braids, but chances are that the most popular braid, so the one you're probably using, is round braid. You might know it as Kongo Gumi, which is the Japanese name for it. And so that's probably the one you're using, and that's top down, bottom up, or vice versa, and a quarter turn, and so on, round like that. So really, I'm going to make my comparisons between round braid on the round disc and what you can do with the Prumihimo disc. So the origins of the braid are slightly different. They're a completely different traditional braid. Right, okay, sorry, I'm just can see some changes happening there.
Sorry, Pru, I was just interfering. I've just put you on main spotlight of you talking now, which will hopefully change over. Can everybody see a main one of Pru? You don't need to see me sitting there as well. So I was just changing that over, and I'll pop you back as host now, hopefully, Pru.
It's always kind of weird not knowing if everyone can see and hear me. Really, I can see comments, but I'm not really sure what else is going on. So I hope you're all seeing this. Anyhow, if you can't say in the comments, if something's not clear, then Donna and I can sort it out, and then we'll be ready for next time to know exactly how to do it for you. So it's a traditional braid. And what's different about it is that it's a straight braid. So the round braid is a spiral braid. And I'm going to show you shortly on my hand screen, and you'll see my hand going hopefully to that hand screen now. So I can do close-ups for you. So I'm going to show you shortly the difference between that. But the braid you might be used to, the round braid on the round disc, it has a spiral construction, and this one has a straight construction. And so what's so great about that is that you can position the beads in straight lines, and so it makes it absolutely amazing for jewelry making. So that really is its main purpose. And the traditional braid can actually be made on these round discs, but it's quite tricky. And I've always found when I've tried to teach it to people that there's a high likelihood of errors being made, because sometimes you take the cord to the right, sometimes to the left. And if you do it wrong, then you get kinks in your braids. So I found it a difficult braid to teach. Then what I decided to do was devise my own sort of system of stickers and numbers. And so I taught that in workshops, and we'd spend the beginning of the workshop annotating the disc to try and get the setup ready. To be honest, that took a lot of time in the workshop. So it worked, it did work, but that got me moving on to actually making my own disc. And the great advantage of my own disc is that I can eliminate the slots that we don't need, so that again eliminates errors basically. And I devised my own system of slots, dots and numbers to guide you through the steps of this braid. And in doing so, I tweaked the original braid slightly in terms of the order. And I did that to lessen the likelihood of errors, and also to, at one point, it helps to keep the beads in position. So those are the sort of tweaks I made to it. But I think what I'm going to do now is move on to my hand screen, and bear with me while I just get it out and show you the difference in the actual braid. So we are now moving, hopefully, to the hand screen. Now, I'm not sure if I've got that as the main screen. So I'll just go completely to my hands now.
Hopefully that's done it. Is that one spotlighted now, Pro?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Hopefully that's the big screen for everyone.
It'll come through on Facebook. I'll let you know in a minute.
Good, good. Okay, so I'm just going to remove the disc for now and show you what we're talking about. So this is the disc that most people are familiar with, the round disc, and this is based on the traditional Maridai, and it was designed by a wonderful woman called Makiko Tada, who enabled us to enjoy this amazing craft by working out how you can use make braids on a little simple piece of foam instead of an expensive piece of wooden equipment. So this is the braid you're probably familiar with, and you're probably familiar with the moves as well. This is top down. You might start the other way, that's fine. Bottom up and a quarter turn. And what you get with that is a spiral like that. So that is the actual construction of the braid. If you do it all in one color, you won't really see that structure, but that's always going to be the structure of that braid. Now I'm going to just move that to one side and show you the structure of the braid made on the Prumihimo disc. And so here I've made it with satin cord and with beading cord. And here, to make it even a bit clearer, I've made it with 2 colors of satin cord. So now there's no spiral here, it's straight. So that is what the difference is. And so that is why I concentrated on this particular braid. Now, we usually use a combination of satin cord and beading cord. And the reason for this is the satin cord, or whatever thicker cord you choose to use, you can play with other things, but that thicker cord gives the structure to the braid, so it's got a nice size. And then the beading cord is what we can put the beads on. So I would normally use satin cord of something like 2 millimeters, 1.5 millimeters or 1 millimeter. and the beading cord I would use would be 0.5 millimeters. And that might be something like Eslon or Ceylon beading cord, or you can also use the very fine Chinese knotting cord. And what you're looking for is a cord that's 0.5 and basically something that will fit through your beads. That's essentially what you're looking for. So I'm going to take those out now. I'm just going to take a little look at the disc. I'm just pausing slightly just to look at your comments, just to see if anything's come up. But I think probably, Donna, if I don't see something, because when I'm demonstrating, it's quite difficult for me to read. So we've got lots more people who've joined us, which is absolutely fantastic. And people are saying hi to each other. That's absolutely lovely. We've got newbies, we've got more experienced people. That's amazing. And Christine saying she can see and hear us me clearly. So that's a relief. And so I'm just flicking through. Okay, so that's lovely. I think
we're
I'm
all good,
okay.
Prue. Yeah, just looking. I think everything's clear. No massive questions yet. Everyone's looking
Good,
forward to it.
good. So here's the disc. Now, the size and shape of the disc doesn't make a difference to the braid that's made on it, but it was a careful consideration. So I chose it to be the sort of smaller size. You tend to get round discs in the sort of larger size or the smaller size. And I've gone for more or less the smaller size, a little bit, tiny bit bigger. And the reason for that is I wanted it to be comfortable in my hand. So I've been braiding for well over a decade, and I couldn't even tell you how many braids I've actually made, but I find the smaller discs more comfortable to hold for longer term use. I've got pretty average to possibly large size hands. So also I was aware that the larger disc can be uncomfortable for people who have particularly small hands. So that was the sizing of the disc. The shape of the disc, again, is so that when you're holding it, you can get an easy reach across to the middle if you need to hold the bead in place or if you need to hold your cords. It could just as easily have been a round disc, really. But I also felt that octagonal shape gave you a clearer idea of where you are in the disc. So, as with all discs, you always braid with them flat, but you tend to refer to the positions on them as if they're upright, like a clock or something. So, you know, we talk about top and bottom, which in this case, you can see I've got number 1 at the top and I've got 2 slots at the bottom. But when I'm braiding, I would braid flat, so there's no top or bottom. But so let's take a look at it then. As I say, I've removed all the unnecessary slots. So what you find is when you hold the disc with number 1 at the top, you've got a slot at the top with a little dot, and you've got 2 slots at the bottom with a dot just on one of them. And these dots are crucial. These are your home positions. So when you braid, you set up your disc with your cords in those home positions, you perform your moves, and you never turn your disc unless your cords are back in those home positions. And what you find is you've got those 1 at the top, 2 at the bottom at number 1, and then just follow the arrow round. So you've got number 2 at the top. And again, you've got a slot at the top with a dot, 2 at the bottom, only 1 with a dot. And you may have noticed the dots on a different side this time. And this is where I've worked out all the moves for you. So you don't need to do that. You don't need to worry about that, whether you're going to the left or the right. Just concentrate on the dots. And then we carry on round with number 3 at the top. Again, it's just a short move, but here you don't need to worry. You just follow the numbers, 1, 2, 3. Again, 3 slots, 1 at the top with a dot, 2 at the bottom, the one on the right has a dot. And then finally, our last position is number 4. And again, 1 at the top, 2 at the bottom. And you may notice that dot has shifted over. So that completes the disc because it's got 8 sides. We've got 4 positions, we've got a top and a bottom for each one. So that makes our 8 sides. And then we're back to number 1. So that basically is the disc. It's got the larger hole. You will find a lot of discs have smaller holes. Because with this, it's ideal for using with all different sorts of bead. It's much better to have a big hole like that. So that, and also this, if ever you have the Kumihimo handle, which you can sometimes get hold of, that fits into that. So that works for that. So that is the disc. Now I'm going to bring in my disc with the cords on. And here we go. I've got some beautiful 2mm satin cord here from Riverside Beads. I love this color. This is the teal color, which coincidentally is your sort of trademark color, isn't it, Donna? So I'm
yes, it's our favorite. Great choice, Pru.
Don't worry about the beads at the moment. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you the basic moves to make a braid without beads, that is. And then after that, I'm going to talk about the bead positions that we can have. And the reason I'm doing it in two parts is that this basic braid structure is so important to just get right, become familiar with, and feel the rhythm of. Because Kumihimo is very rhythmic, and with other braids, you'll probably be aware that once you've mastered the moves, you just work away and your hands sort of know what they're doing. Now, the issue here is the rhythm here is different. So what you're used to is top down, bottom up move, but this is going to be top down, bottom up, bottom across, and that's really important. So it is a matter, I always say to people, time is never wasted in practice. The more you can practice, the better. And you want to practice until you perform those moves in a really natural way, accurately and confidently. And don't worry about beads until you can do that. So what are the moves? They're so simple. So first of all, it's top to bottom. And as I said before, I've eliminated all the unnecessary slots. So there's absolutely only one place you can go. So top to bottom. Then bottom to top. So far, so good. Only one place you can go. Now, very important, bottom across. And you'll see what I'm doing now is when I go bottom across, my cords are now back in the slots with dots. So I'm back in my home positions. I can now turn my disc. I'm at 1. I turn around to 2, and now it's really super easy because it's exactly the same moves. It's top to bottom. Now here we're actually going to the other side of the cord, but there's only one place you can go. There's only one spare slot, so that's the one you go into. Bottom to top, bottom across. I'm on the dots, I can move around. Now do the small move round to number 3. And this is where I've got my beading cords, my thinner cords. So again, same thing, top to bottom, bottom to top, bottom across. I'm on the dots. I can rotate to number 4, top to bottom, bottom to top, bottom across, and that completes the sequence. So a sequence is once round the disc, 1, 2, 3, 4, all 3 moves, at all 4 positions, it's just 12 moves. So that's a sequence. So I'm back at number 1. Now, it is super easy, but this is where it sometimes is easy to get overconfident. So really don't forget that practice. I really can't stress that enough. So top to bottom, bottom to top, bottom across. I'm on the dots. I can turn top to bottom, bottom to top, bottom across. I'm on the dots, so I can turn top to bottom, bottom to top, bottom across. I'm on the dots, so I can turn top to bottom, bottom to top, bottom across. I've completed my sequence. I return to number 1. So that's how simple it is. What does it look like? Okay, let's have a little look. I have done a little bit more. What you're looking for is a nice straight braid. So you can see those straight lines, neat stitches of the beading cord lined up with straight line of the satin cord. You might get a little bit of a twist. That is perfectly normal when you first start, and that's a tension issue. That just means that you've pulled a little bit harder on some cords than others, and that gets better with practice, or you can steam it out. So I can talk to you about that steaming issue later. If, however, there are lumps and bumps and knobbles and irregularity, then I'm afraid you've made mistakes. So then in that case, what you need to do is just sort of reset yourself and think about that rhythm. 1, 2, 3, turn. 1, 2, 3, turn. The other thing that might go wrong is your tension on the disc. So you always want to have your cords nice and tight in the slots like that. As I said before, you want to hold the disc level. You need to have the point of braiding, which is where your initial knot or where the braid forms, the point of braiding, that should be as close as possible to the middle of that hole, and it should be level with the top of the hole. And if you're using a weight, and I do recommend a weight, I find that for most people that works best, though it's not essential. A 50-gram weight is about right for most people, and that should be hanging free. Now, I've got a table under here, so I'm not using a weight. And what I'm doing, you can see my fingers through there, gripping the braid, and I'm just exerting an even downward pressure with my 2 fingers. So if that's more comfortable, you can do that. But I have been teaching for many years, and I've been teaching on this disc for many years, and I definitely find that to begin with, a weight is best for most people. So that's what I'd recommend. So the other thing that might go wrong is this point of braiding sort of straying around the disc. And when your disc is very new and those slots are tight, what you can find is that when you do, say, your bottom move, particularly with the thicker cords, as you pull down, so I'm going to pull it super hard now, as you pull down to pull it into a tight slot, see how I'm pulling that point of braiding close to the edge of the disc, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm just going to reset, just tighten up my cords, get myself back where I should be. And this time what I'm going to do is, as I bring that cord down, so that I don't pull on the point of braiding, I'm just going to trap it with my thumb. And now I can pull as hard as I like to get it into that slot. And indeed, with a very new disc, you don't need to get it right the way in. All you need to do is make sure it's gripped. So you might find to begin with just tucking it into the edge is enough. With an older disc, you'll definitely need to go right the way in. So use your thumb if necessary. So I'm going to take that back. And as you're braiding, try to make sure you've always got a nice cross of your satin cords and a nice X of your beading cords. And as you perform your moves, they should come right in the middle. So as my cord comes down, it's going right in the middle of those 2. And as it goes up, it goes right in the middle again. I'm using my thumb. As you can see, I didn't in the first move to keep it out of the way. So it's a matter of making sure your moves are happening in the middle of the disc. So those are just a few pointers of what can go wrong with that braid. But it's all about practice. Don't be disheartened if when you start, it doesn't quite work out the way you think it should. Just keep on practicing, think about the rhythm, and you can always reuse the cord if you need to. So I'm just going to check on comments, see if there's anything else. I'm not seeing any questions there that I need to address right at the moment. So that's great. Lots of people joining us, so that's fantastic.
Prue, there was just a question on starting the braid that perhaps got missed a little bit lower down. So
sure.
We didn't show the original starting point, and I think I do mine differently to you, but you are obviously the guru of how to.
No, there are different ways of doing things.
There's certainly other options, isn't there? Yeah, but I do know, I can't remember who it was, sorry, but they did ask about starting the braid.
Right, in terms of how you put it onto the disc.
I think literally how you originally tie your cords together and start laying them out.
Great question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this off. Now this will mess up my end of the braid, but don't worry about that. So what my starting point is going to be a knot. So I'm going to make it a little bit further up now. So let's just, in fact, I'm going to snip that off so we can start afresh. So there we go. So I've got, I tend to find you need slightly more, when you're doing beaded braids, you'll need slightly more of the thinner cord than you do the thicker cord, because that's got to go around the beads. If you're doing just a braid without beads, you'll need equal quantities. And the quantities you use are the same as with the round braid. You generally have 3 times the amount of cord for each slot as you require for the finished braid. So if you want a 20-centimeter braid, you would have 3 times that, so that's 60 centimeters for each cord. Now that is generous, but it's always worth being a little bit generous with your cord so that you don't run out, because that can be tricky. So that's how much cord you need. So once you've got your 8 cords together, 4 of the satin cord, 4 of the beading cord, just tie them in a knot. And there are other ways of starting off your Kumihimo. This way, advising people to start with a knot makes that calculation of 3 times the finished required amount easier to work out. Then you just hold the knot rather, in the middle of the disc like that, and then just pop your cords in the slots with dots. Now, you're going to have your satin cord in the slots at number 1. And the way I recommend this disc to be used is to only ever have the thicker cords in certain slots and then your thinner cords in other slots. So I'm going to put the thick cords in number 1 and number 2. So I'm just finding it. There we go. Number 2, slot with a dot, bottom, slot with a dot. There we go. And now that leaves my slots at number 3 and 4. And I'm for the life of the disc, I'm never going to put thick cords in these slots. And that will keep them nice and tight so they can grip the thinner cords. If you start using thicker cords in those slots, it will make it much harder for the disc to grip the cords, and it will make it harder for you to maintain good tension and to keep the beads in position and all those things. So, eventually a disc will wear out, and then what I felt, but a disc is never completely useless. So you can use it for thicker cords then and just keep a nice fresh one for your very fine cords. But by reserving certain slots just for the thin cords, you will find that your disc lasts much longer. So I'm just now putting the thin cords in the slots, top and bottom slots at 3 and at 4. And so that is the setup. So that was the basic braid. And again, I'm just looking at the comments to see if there are any other questions.
I don't think you've missed anything else at the moment.
Good, good. Because it's to the side of me, and I think there might be a tiny delay. Okay, it gives me a breather anyhow.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think that was the main question that had been asked so far.
Excellent. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take the disc away, and I'm going to show you what you can achieve with different bead placement, and then we'll come back to the disc and I'll show you how to add the beads. So when you design something new like this, you end up having to make out your own terminology, really. So what I'm going to show you here is, first of all, is what I call single beading. So the braid itself is actually round in structure, but it helps if we think about it as having 4 sides, because we have 4 beading cords. So this is single beading, and what it means is I've got beads on just one of those 4 sides. So they can be large or small. So with this one, as you can see, I've just got the beads along this side, and then the other 3 sides, absolutely nothing. So that's single beading. And this is exactly the same thing. I've just used larger beads, and I've used alternating beads, large beads and small beads, but the same thing. I've got just beads on one side. So that can work, that can be really pretty for quite a striking little bracelet like that. Really comfortable to wear because you've just got the braid against your wrist. It's economical in the beads, the amount of beads that you use and everything, because you're just using them on one side. So that is single beading. So I'll put that there so we can still see it. And now I'm reaching for the next example, which is, oh, I'm sure I had 2 here. There you go. Okay, so double beading. So here we have an example. This is, if we look at it closely, you can see I've got long Magatama beads there, and I've got them on two sides of the braid. So that means you can see the braid very clearly in the middle, on the front and on the back, but you've got beads on either side. And now I'm going to bring in another example of, again, double beading, exactly the same structure, but a different effect, because again, I've used large and small here. So I've got some 6mm pearls, and I've got some size 8 seed beads there. So again, you've got the beads on either side, and you've got the flat front, so you can see the braid. I think it's nice to see the braid actually when you're doing Kumihimo. And the underside is also braid, so that's nice and comfy against your wrist. Again, quite an economical use of beads, because unlike something like fully beaded round braid Kumihimo, where anyone who's done it will know you use an awful amount of beads, with this, you've just got them on two sides. So that's double beading. Let's pop that there. Now, I'm sure you can tell where we're going with this. We're going triple now. So here's an example of triple. And if you look at it closely, you can see that I've got little beads in the middle. So I've used top drilled beads here. These happen to be petal beads, could be anything. You know, this is the great thing about this disc. You can really use virtually anything. There are really no beads I've come across yet of a moderate size that can't be used with the Prumihimo disc. So this is triple beading. So we've got the longer beads on the outsides, and I've got the little tiny size 8s in the middle. And if I turn it over, I've got nothing. So if I turn it over, it looks very similar to that. But when I turn it back again, you have to look a bit closely, because they're rather small beads there. I just wanted them as a little highlight. You can do so much with this braid, you see. And then I've got another example here. This is also triple beading, quite a different look. So I've got little leaf beads on one side, alternating with size 8s. And then on the other two sides, I've got size 8s. But these are exactly the same structure, but just using different beads to get a different effect. So again, beads on three sides of the braid, and on the fourth side, nothing, just braid. So that again is really comfy against your skin. So single, double, triple. Let's find some quadruple. So here we go. Here's an example of quadruple beading. Now, to be honest, you probably use this less than the other three. These are the three. I think probably double and triple are the ones I use most. But you can get some lovely effects with this. And so here I've used quite large beads. And if we look then, if I just turn it round, you're going to see a row of beads there in front of you. I turn round, row of beads, row of beads, row of beads. So all the way round, it's exactly the same. So that's quadruple beading. Still seeing the braid because of the structure of this. It's different to round braid, where the braid sinks right in between the beads. This way you still see the braid. That's why you can have fun with lovely colors of cord. And then a much smaller version. I did have one with brighter seed beads, and I couldn't find it at all. So but it's quite subtle but quite sweet. So again, this has got beads on four sides of the braid. So seeing the braid there, the color of the braid, and I've just got these little tiny frosted size 8 seed beads on all four sides. So those are the four main bead placements: single beading, double beading, triple beading, quadruple beading. So does anyone have any questions about that? Again, I'm just having...
Sorry, Pru, it probably gets a bit confusing because I'm replying to people by message as well.
No, that's good. No, that's better, because my other screen keeps flicking off
quite quickly. Yeah,
the whole time.
I think one of the main questions that was asked was about the cords originally that you were using. Now I have added a link in it. It's generally 2mm satin, isn't it? You tend to use
1, 2, or 1.5. So what I'm using in the example is this lovely one from you. So this is 2mm. This is a lovely one to use with the Prumihimo disc, because it braids up quite fast. The other cords, so here I've used a 1mm, so it's a much thinner braid. This is a 1mm as well. This is a 2mm versus a 1mm.
It's really nice to see how differently they come up as well, isn't it? You get that slightly thicker structure on them.
Exactly. And what happens also is the thicker the cord, the fatter the braid, the wider the braid, and the more widely spaced the beads will be as well. So as with any sort of jewelry making, every single choice you make will affect your design. And so that's why you can have complete control over your design. So again, here we're seeing the difference between 2mm and 1mm. So I've been able to use much larger beads here. And then I've used, for a lot of these, I've used something like this, a beading cord on a reel, Eslon Ceylon, but also the Chinese knotting cord is probably more economical as well. As long as it fits through your beads, it's going to be fine. That's the only criteria, really, fitting through your beads. And although I use a lot of this satin cord, this is not the end of the story. You can use so many other things. You can use ribbon, you can use knitting yarn, you can use the wider Chinese knotting cord, you can use soutache cord. What else? You can use leather, you can use that faux suede thong. There's really no limit to what you can use. Just remember that if you use very thick things, you're going to be stretching those slots. So if you're going to experiment a lot with different thicknesses of cord, I do advise having more than one disc, because even when you're reserving some slots just for the thinner cords, if you're going to play around with a lot of difference in width in these thicker cords, you might want another disc as well. So that's just a just a little warning there, really. But yes, I do recommend 2mm to begin with because it works up so fast. I think people get less twisting in their braid that way. It's more satisfying, really. But anything 1, 1.5, 2 is what I'd recommend. So
I think one of the other things people are saying, you just make this look so easy. You always do. It fascinates me when I spend time with Pru. She's an incredibly talented lady, and everyone's saying how beautiful the samples are. Pru just has the most amazing selection of samples. She really does. You do slightly more advanced classes as well, don't you, yourself? For
yes,
people that want to develop this braid.
That's right. And what I have found is when I first designed this disc, I thought that this was all you'd be able to do with it, but you can do so much more with it. And of course, once you've got your braid off the disc, you can play around with embellishment of different sorts, adding different beads, adding different cords as an embellishment, sewing parts of it together. So the sky really is the limit once you get going. But the main thing is to master that basic braid first, and mastering these 4 different bead positions, and then you can do anything. You can do absolutely
anything. Your book's obviously a wonderful place to start for that. You really have explained that core technique in so much detail in your book. I should put my video. I don't know if you guys can see me or whether it's showing Pru, but it's Donna speaking. Sorry. Right. So Pru's book there is absolutely incredible. I would highly recommend it for development, right from where Pru's been showing you today, right through the different braid structures there that Pru's been talking about. And of course it gives you lots of pattern designs as well, so using lots of different beads and versatile things that you can flick in between, so you can use different parts of the technique that Pru's showing you and combine them with other things and other techniques. It's just the knowledge in there, Pru, is quite incredible. It's an amazing book.
Thank you. I think I would always say to people, don't be deceived by its small size. Look how basically how compact it is. But I worked so hard with the publishers to get all the information I wanted to into this bag-sized book. I wanted it to be something that people could have with them, could slip into their craft bag or whatever. And so that's why through the pages you'll find snaking different examples. So there are the sort of main pictures, but also additional pictures, just sort of peeping in so I could get as many examples in as possible. And so for this book basically explains in great detail those 4 different bead positions, and then for each bead position there are 2 projects, and those projects have been carefully chosen to develop you. So the first one is more basic and the second one develops you a bit further, but there are techniques within those 8. I worked so hard to make sure I got a cross section of different techniques in those different projects. So for instance, this one here, which, let me see where it is. This also teaches you embellishment techniques. So you learn how to do a braid and then how to embellish it. Here you learn about joining braids. So although it's 8 projects aren't that many, there's no crossover in the actual techniques you learn in them. So you're learning a different technique in each one, and you can develop that for any positioning of the beads. So you know, there's a lot in there, but it's really nice and compact, and you can take it anywhere.
We absolutely highly endorse the book. We do stock it. We've just received a new delivery. So we do at Riverside, we do a fabulous bundle of Pru's book and a disc together. So that's obviously a great starting point to, if you've got some of these materials Pru's been talking about, that's the perfect starting point for you. If you're Kumihimo advocates already, then that's certainly where you can go. But then we also do a couple of other bundles that Pru and I have worked together on. One of them that we take on to Create and Craft as well, but we do have stock of that at the moment, and that's something we designed, Pru, that kind of, it doesn't cover everything in this book at all, but what we were trying to do was pick beads that would work for the different projects within the book, and then Pru's put us an additional instruction book, or instruction sheets, I should say, that moves the materials that we've put in the bundle into the projects within the book. So it will say go to project on page so and so, and it will help you to use the beads that we put in that bundle. So if you are a brand newbie and you're needing to move things into, you know, really have everything you need, then that's a bundle that we've put together. So I'll pop a link for you in the chat.
That'd be fantastic.
But if you just go onto our website and search Prumihimo, it will come up with our options that we have for Pru, if not.
And we worked so hard to get that bundle together, didn't we?
We really did, yeah. We tried to think of as many things as we could, and you know, to really expand what you could do with the book, because we didn't have all the exact beads that Pru used there, so we
because you don't need them, because the whole point about this really is that this teaches you how to do things, and you can change different beads. You can see from these how just by changing your beads slightly, you get a very different effect, or changing the positioning of your beads, you can get a very different effect. So, you know, by having a bundle with beads that will work with the Prumihimo disc and will work with the designs that are in here, but are slightly different, you get a different angle on it, which is the fun of it, I reckon. So, Donna, you've
I've been trying to reply to everybody. There's a few people sort of saying it seems much easier than Kumihimo. What's your thoughts on that, Pru?
Right. I think they're equally easy. I think that with regular, you don't need to use the regular disc to use this. And in fact, I've taught many people from scratch in workshops who've didn't even know what Kumihimo is, and I've taught them on the Prumihimo disc. So you don't need that prior experience. Sometimes even that prior experience can be a disadvantage because of this rhythm thing, that if you get very stuck into that rhythm of top down, bottom up turn, top down, bottom up turn, then you have got to sort of reacclimatize yourself when you do this one. I would say they are equally easy, and they're meant to be complementary. So I still use my round discs, you know, the whole time. This is an additional tool really to take you somewhere else, but it's complementary to the round disc, and that again I think is the fun of it, that it's a new level, but it doesn't replace it. It is very easy, definitely very easy. It is, for sure. And the only problem is that sometimes people get a bit of twisting, by which I mean, you know, because they are pulling a little bit harder on some chords than others at the beginning, sometimes you might get a sort of little bit of a twist like that. Let me show that a bit better. So instead of being nice and flat, might twist a bit like that. That's really easy to sort out. And I've got details of how to sort that out on my website as well. So you just need to give it a few blasts of steam from your steam iron and then straighten it out, put a heavy book on it and just leave it to cool completely, and that will flatten it. And if it doesn't, what you can do is then cover it with a couple of cloths, a bit of steam, couple of cloths, and then actually use your iron over the top of it. Now you do have to be careful because you're using nylon cord and that's got a very low melting point. So if you're actually going to do that, I would recommend just on a bit of spare cord, actually just seeing with your iron at what point it starts to flatten it and sort of fuse it together a bit, because that's what you don't want. You just want to flatten it, basically to straighten the braid. And really it's just like if you're doing dressmaking, you would expect to press your garments afterwards. Sometimes with this particular braid, because it's straight, you need to press it to get it flat a bit. But that I would say is the only issue, and really it's just about that rhythm. It's all about the rhythm. So it's easy. It is as easy as it looks.
It truly is. Yeah, I would completely endorse that. And as an enthusiastic braider myself of Kumihimo, of the original kind of Congo Gumi and the different structures within regular Kumihimo, it's something that I have thoroughly enjoyed. So I learned from Pru, not particularly on a full class, more on a sort of tutorial like this, just a brief demonstration, and I was able to go ahead and create different designs and really pick it up. But I feel it as if it's obviously a structure of Kumihimo, but I do feel it definitely is. For me, it was a new technique, so it was something new I could learn. It was in addition to regular Kumihimo, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I probably don't pick up my disc as often as I'd like, but I have done one of Pru's classes and had an absolute blast. It was wonderful.
That was great fun. That was the Christmas one, wasn't it?
Yeah, I loved that. I really did. So yeah, I would still like a different end cap on that. I went a bit off with my colours, didn't I? And I didn't quite have the end cap I needed. So I'm still debating whether I'd like to change that. But yes, that's the beauty of it. You can change those up. So we have had a couple of questions about the cord, which I know you did mention, but Lisa was just asking about having a separate disc for if you wanted to just use thin cord, for example. Do you find on this you do just have 4 strands of thin cord?
It takes a long time to work up. So yes, I do sometimes.
Yeah.
There are very delicate designs you can use, and you can use maybe stick with your 0.5mm cord in the thin slots, and you can either have that in the other slots as well, or you can have a slightly thicker cord, again, a knotting cord or a beading cord of about 0.9 or 1mm.
Yeah.
It will work up very slowly, but you can do some very pretty things with delicate beads.
More delicate
so you
ones,
can.
yeah.
But
so I think, like you were saying, you often use more things like perhaps leather or something as an alternative, or and you were saying you may well have a couple of discs that you keep for particular types of cord, and certainly a lot of the ones are done with satin and the Eslon. So I personally I think I've only got 2 of your discs on the go at the moment, so that's not bad for me. But one of them I do keep purely for the one that I use more frequently, which would be a satin and an Eslon combination. And then I probably have my other one for other type of projects. But that also applies to Kumihimo, doesn't it, as well? Exactly. Regular Kumihimo, if you use a particular cord in a disc all the time, you would want to keep that separate.
Yes, exactly. And this tip here also applies to regular Kumihimo. When your disc gets a little bit worn out, what you can do is just stack it with another one. You don't need to glue it, because what you'd find is that the slots you line up the slots and then just pop the cord in, so it'll keep it together, and that will give you a bit of extra tension. That gives you a lot of extra life on your disc, whether it be one of these or a round one. And even if it's 2 discs that you've used for slightly thicker cord, you'll find that the combination of the 2 together will do a very good job of gripping thinner cord. So that's just another little tip. You can never have too many discs, I reckon, but then I would say that, wouldn't I?
It's true, though. It's absolutely true. Certainly as you progress with the braiding and you find you want to have more of them as well, I think. So Pru also does have another book that is really wonderful. Don't want to overwhelm those of you that are beginners, but I think it's nice for those of you that have perhaps been on a class with us or with Pru, or have got the disc and the book. This is your more recent book, isn't it?
That's right. This was the book that was always in me right from the beginning of when I did Kumihimo. But funnily enough, it was the second one I had published because the Prumihimo disc came along. But right from the beginning, I was aware that people found endings difficult. And in my own Prumihimo group, that's probably one of the questions that comes up most frequently. So I wanted to write a book explaining lots of different ways of finishing off your Kumihimo. So in this, I go through the basics of gluing on and wiring on your ends. So I'm just reaching for an example here. This would be an example of a wired end. This would be an example of a glued end. So those are the two most common ways of finishing off your Kumihimo. So I go through those in detail and show you ways of customizing them as well. But I also introduce a lot of other ways of finishing off your Kumihimo. And just reach and see if I can find an example behind me. Well, button fastenings. And although I do loads, oh, here we go. So something like this is a button fastening. So that gets around the whole need for gluing or wiring if neither of those suit you. And there are lots of other different ways of doing your endings. So again, I've tried to pack in as much as possible. Don't be misled by the small size of the book. There's a lot there. And the way it works is kind of a bit like Wikipedia it does. So I didn't want to keep repeating myself for all, because there are some techniques that you use right the way through, but I needed to explain them. So when you come across those key techniques, like wrapped loop, for instance, it will be highlighted in blue. And then you turn to the section with the blue pages, edges of the page, and you will find wrapped loop there somewhere. So where are we? I should know of, there we go, and you'll find wrapped loop. So once you've mastered that, you won't need to keep flipping back every time, but you will find that system all the way through. So you can, like I say, like Wikipedia, you click on it if you need to, or you just go, if you know, then you're fine. And so that's the way I've been able to get a lot of detail into this book, a lot of different techniques. So I showed you one button fastening there. This is the chapter on button fastenings, but it's absolutely packed of different ways of doing it. So do braided buttonholes, plaited buttonholes. There's a different sort of braided buttonhole there. So all different ways so that you can find ways. There's a beaded buttonhole. I also have a chapter on crimp endings, and then different sorts of loop fastenings. So there are so many different ways of doing things, and each braid will have a different way and each person will find ways that they're happiest with. So we've got whipping and things there. So that book again is designed to fit into your bag, so it's there whenever you want it, and it's designed to really open your eyes to lots of different ways of doing endings, and having fun with them basically, and not being frightened of them.
Yeah, that's wonderful. This particular book, I know, I appreciate it's not exactly just for your Prumihimo, but I thought it was well worth a mention because I know we've got lots of different, I recognise a lot of the people that are here today, and some of them are already keen braiders and Kumihimo enthusiastic already. So this book is that next level, I guess. You know, we all I get asked the same questions as you really about endings, and actually what your go-to is your glue on end, which is lovely and you know, really versatile in itself, but this just expands that. I think it's about taking your levels of your you know, what it is you want to do.
Yes,
excuse absolutely. If you can hear my builders in the background, guys, I do apologize, I keep trying to mute myself. It's getting ready for reopening our shop, which I can't wait for. Oh,
that's going to be so exciting, isn't it?
It truly is, yeah.
So what I thought I'd do now is show you how to add the beads, basically. So I'll just pop that away and get my disc back in. So I'm just going to do a quick sequence of beads without beads, just to get my cord, my sort of point of braiding all nice and neat there. So I'm doing my regular moves. And what I've got here is I've got beads on all 4 cords so that I can show you the different types. So that was just my first sequence, just to get it all neat at the beginning. Okay, so let's go back to single beading here, where we've got beads on one side of the braid. So to do this, all you do is you do your regular moves at number 1, top to bottom, bottom to top, bottom across. And at number 2, note how I'm using my thumbs to make sure I don't pull that point of braiding across. And now at number 3, I'm going to drop in a bead just from number 3. Now, if you're used to round braid, you will be used to tucking your bead behind a cord. This is different. There's no cord to tuck it behind, but there is a little place for it to sit, and it has to sit in this top V. So I'm going to drop the bead down the cord. So here it comes, and hopefully you can see that just sitting in its V. And I'm going to complete my moves now. So what you can do is just give it a little tap down with your thumb to make sure it stays there. I'm going to complete my moves, and I'm going to be quite careful here. So notice how I'm putting my thumb on the cord again, because I don't want to pull that bead out of its little slot there. It's a little V. And so this is single beading. So I'm only putting in one bead. I'm only doing it from the top cord at number 3. So I do my bottom up, bottom across. And all this time I'm watching that bead, because it could still jump over. And if it does, it's in the wrong position on the braid, so it'll spoil your braid. So I'm watching it all the time. Now I'm turning round, still watching. I'm going to do my normal moves at number 4. And once they've been done, that bead is locked into position, so I can relax a bit. So that is how you get the beads in just on the top cord, on one side of your braid. So now I'm going to carry on round, and I'm going to show you. So I'm doing my moves at number 1. I'm doing my moves at number 2. I'm going to move those out and bring this one back in. So this is what we're going to do now. So now I'm at number 3. What I'm going to do this time is I'm going to put in a bead from the top cord and from the bottom cord, and that will give me this effect. So this, I've got more beads to keep an eye on. So top bead just the same, sits in its V. Give it a squash down, keep an eye on it. Now, bottom cord, I lift up, drop the bead down, and it's going to sit in the bottom V. So it's got its own little compartment. It mustn't go over and sit with the other one. So again, I'm giving it a tap down with my thumb, moving across. I'm still watching. So just want to make sure you can see that reasonably clearly. So we've got a bead in the top V. Could be a bit clearer, couldn't it really, if I had white behind, but sadly I don't. And one in the bottom. So I'm still watching. They could jump out. I'm going to move. Anytime you're worried, just give them a tap down with your thumb. Now I'm doing my moves at number 4, and they've locked those beads into their own little places. So that was double beading. Now I'm going to do triple beading. Turn it over so you can see it. So that's beads on 3 sides of the braid. So as ever, I do my moves at number 1. I do my moves at number 2. And at 3, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pop my bead into its little V, give it a tap. I'm going to do the one at number 4. Oh, sorry, bottom at number 3. So there we go. So exactly what we did before. I'm really keeping an eye on them because, again, they can still jump out. Now I'm going to turn to number 4. And this time I'm also going to drop a bead from the top cord at number 4. And it has its own little V to sit in. So I'm squashing it into position. And because I only want it on 3 sides, I'm only doing it from that top cord. I do my bottom move, bottom across. So now I've got 3 beads all sitting in their own little V's. So at this stage, these 2 are locked into position. This one could still jump out. But as soon as I do the next moves, it's locked into position. So I'm really keeping an eye on it for now. And we are going to move on for this to beads on 4 sides of the braid, quadruple beading. So it's top to bottom, bottom to top, bottom across, and round to number 2, top to bottom, bottom to top, bottom across. So same as before. A bead goes into the top V, a bead goes into the bottom V, and I mustn't forget to complete my move and keep an eye on those beads. Now at number 4, and you notice how sometimes I just give them a little tap down just to make sure they are staying where they should be. You can also see I'm making a bit of a bird's nest here, but don't worry about that. I would normally braid with the cords all hanging freely. That's the best way, not over a table. So now I'm doing a bead from the top. It sits in its little V. And of course, there's one space left for that bottom cord and a drop in a bead there. Complete my move. Keep an eye. It's on these 2 at number 4. I've really got to keep an eye on. And when I do my moves at number 1, that will lock them into position. So those are the 4 main bead positions on one side of the braid, on 2 sides of the braid, on 3 sides of the braid, and on 4 sides of the braid. And when you finish, when you have to stop doing your Prumihimo braiding, it's always best to try and finish that sequence if you can. So I'm stopping at 4, so I know I start at 1, but it's actually very easy to see which cords you moved last. So if I look closely at that, I can see that I moved the cords at number 4 last, so I know my next moves are at number 1. So there's not a lot to show you there because, of course, I rather quickly showed you 1 side of the braid, 2 sides of the braid, 3 sides of the braid, and then this last one is 4 sides of the braid. But they tie up with the samples I've been showing. So that is how the beads are put into position. So I don't know if anyone has any questions on that.
I think we missed some other questions, Prue. There wasn't anything come through yet on that.
Okay.
Darlene said that your books are wonderful, well written, and a great resource.
Thank you.
Julie was saying, I think Julie's done a class here with you, and she said that the first time she did it, she did find it twisted. And it was, but she's quite a tight braider anyway, but she's managed to sort it now. I think practice, isn't it, as with anything.
Definitely. And some tension, some people do braid very tightly, and the tight tension is more likely to cause twisting, but it's actually how regular your tension is. And if you're having to think about which move do I do next, you're tending not to be so regular. That's why I always try to stress lots of practice, because then you get into the rhythm of it and your moves become more regular. Sometimes a workshop, there's a lot going on and I'm stopping and starting people, showing them different things. So sometimes that can contribute to the twisting. But often you find when we're doing it quietly on your own at home with no interruptions, that's when you get much straighter braids.
It flows better, absolutely. Yeah, I agree as well. The first little bit I did, it was just sort of understanding how you can over pull it sometimes, or I sometimes switch between left and right hand when I'm braiding. It's just finding out if that needs to work for you, or whether you need to do it all with one hand, whether you can get your tension right and things with this, I find.
Exactly, it's finding your own way. Yes.
And there's no right or wrong way, is there, so long as you're happy with the results that come out.
Yes, exactly.
And then one of the other questions we had was from Christine. I'm not entirely sure what bead she's referring to, but she's asked if she can use nugget beads. I'm not sure what they are. Are they a Czech one or something, or
are they like chips and nuggets?
Maybe like chips, semi-precious chips or something.
Yes, you can. I mean, you can definitely. You can use any bead really, up to about, I think probably I'd say up to about 6 millimeters in diameter works best. When you get beyond that with any sort of kumihimo, what you find is you've got a lot of cord showing, because you've got the cord going from the braid up to the hole in the bead, through, and then coming out on the other side. That doesn't have to be a problem. I mean, if you've got pretty colored cord, it's not necessarily a problem, but most people don't like to have too much beading cord showing on either side of their bead. So if your nuggets are really huge, that might be an issue. But there are ways around that. Then if you just put in a smaller bead, do a big one, then a small one, big one, small one, you get a really pretty effect. But yes, if you're talking about gemstone chips and nuggets, then they're fantastic for all sorts of kumihimo, definitely.
Yeah, they do look really lovely. Yes, Christina said chips. Yeah, it was Christina Ash says yes, chips and nuggets. Yes, they are fabulous, really, aren't they, for braiding with both regular kumihimo and on the Prumihimo as well.
Yeah, I can see a question now from Diane about using bobbins, which is an interesting one. So for those that don't know, bobbins are really great to keep your cords under control. So you will have seen here, I've got in a bit of a tangle. I generally find that if I'm using bracelet lengths of cord, I would not normally get a tangle like that because I would not have something underneath my disc, so it wouldn't be tangling. So a bracelet length of cord, which might be up to 75 centimeters, something like that, I definitely wouldn't use bobbins just because you've got to wind them up. And so what I would use instead to keep my beads in position is a stop bead. So what you can't see here so well is this last bead is a stop bead. So I've just gone through it twice in the same direction and tightened the cord, and then that allows me to move that bead up and down the cord, because when you're braiding, and this applies to all sorts of braiding, it's best to have your beads nice and close to the disc so that your hand movements are nice and short. But then as your cord gets used up, you can just pull on that bead and release more cord. So once you get to necklace lengths, that's when you're more likely to get tangling. So when you get over 1 meter per length of cord, I think most people would prefer to use bobbins. Though, to be honest, I often would just stand up. If you stand up and have it all flowing freely, and every now and then, every few moves, just run your hands through the cords, make it part of the movements, you can often do without bobbins. But the rule of thumb generally is bracelets, just use stop beads, and necklaces, use bobbins.
That was all the questions I saw. Julie's just said she did do the class here, which I thought she had, and she said she would love to do one in the future once we can all come out and about again.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think we all can't wait for that time, definitely.
Absolutely, yeah. It's been really nice to do this. It's it's sort of missing those faces, isn't it? It's so lovely when we can see each other, and we bizarrely, considering our distance between us, we do see each other a few times a year with the different things we do. And
yes, absolutely.
It is terrible not to be able to do it. So this is really lovely of you to do this with us, Pru. Thank you.
Well, it's fun. No, it's great fun for me, and it's lovely to feel the sort of sense of community with other braiders, because we are a smaller group than beaders and metal workers and all the rest of it. We're a very select group, I think, braiders.
Select but important, I think we have a place.
definitely. So it's nice to sort of build a sense of community amongst us, definitely.
Absolutely. Somebody did ask if we're popping it on our YouTube channel. We said if it went well we would, didn't we, Pru?
Yes.
So I think this has gone rather well, so we can certainly pop this up on our YouTube channel. So on the Riverside Beads channel, we'll pop that as well. And yeah, people are asking that they're a bit far away for a class. So I know Pru does some wonderful classes, and we had talked about doing some at Riverside, but I know Pru is a very busy lady at the moment. So whether we'll get a chance to get one in, a Zoom class in, I don't know, but watch this space.
Who knows exactly? I think Zoom classes are here for good for the crafting the jewellery making community, because there are always going to be some people who are not able to make it to classes, and in the past they've just had to miss out. Whereas actually during the pandemic, a lot of people have been able to join in with things that they haven't been able to before, which is wonderful.
We were saying this is one of the nice positives out of it, that we've all learned to use technology we never thought we'd have to learn, let alone be able to learn. So
yes.
Yeah, it's been nice. This has been our learning curve, hasn't it, really? Technology.
There's been a lot to learn.
Yes. We got here. We've mastered this. We seem to have it. It's all looking very professional.
It is handy having you on dealing with the questions, though. I must admit,
yes, I'll have to be your PA when you do
I'm afraid
yours.
so. I'm finding that more difficult to keep an eye on everything and actually do a demonstration.
Yeah. Oh, I'm happy to help out if you need me to answer any of your questions when we do another.
Thank you.
Yeah, Lisa said she's in Scarborough. Oh, Lisa, I never knew where you lived, but yeah, she said a Zoom class would be lovely if we can get that done. Yeah, I think that's all the questions. I hope I haven't missed anything, anybody, but I can pop back on afterwards and answer anything. I know somebody asked again about the different cords, and again, the thicknesses of cords, and just as a reminder, Pru was saying that she often uses a 1mm or a 2mm satin cord, which we have either by the meter or by the roll on the website and in store from Monday, those of you that are near to us. And then this particular setup's a Eslon, isn't it, on this disc?
Yes, it is. Yes.
So yeah, a combination of that. If you start varying it and using lots of different cords that may expand the width of the slots in the disc, that may be when you want to get yourself a second disc and allocate one for particular styles of braid that you find that you use more.
Yes, definitely.
But I mean, if you did miss any of that, you could watch back. But it's so generous what you've done with us today, Pru. I think we've just picked up so many things. There was a couple of things I thought, oh yes, that I missed that, and yeah, I didn't know that. So that's been lovely for me to pick up a couple of things. Thank you.
Oh, that's fantastic. It has been really lovely for me, because obviously the Prumihimo disc is my little baby, and so it means a lot to me to be able to show it to people and put it through its paces and show people what you can do with it. And I feel there's still a lot more to do with it. When I first developed it, I didn't realize how much more I'd be able to do with it, such as different braid structures on it, and different things with the braids once you get them off the disc, and different beads. You know, every time a new bead shape becomes available, there's a way of using
a way to include it. So in our little bundle, we put things like Montes, which I think you did cover in your book. I think that's one of the reasons we put those in, didn't we? And they're a diamante on the top. So if you look at them from that top angle, you see that beautiful diamante. But actually, it's crisscrossed underneath with the holes that go across the bottom, and they work beautifully then, because then they sit where you see the full bit of the diamante on the top, which makes a nice addition.
Yes, yeah, they're lovely to use, really lovely to use.
So yeah, the beads like that, where top loaded beads and things as well, just the nature of the braid structure that you do, these just work fabulously.
And lots of pearls work so well with it as well.
My phone ringing, do apologise. I'm having to keep my phone on to look at the messages.
So Philida's saying it reminds her she needs to get the Prumihimo discount. Yes, you do, Philida, right away.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. It's that, even if you haven't done it yet, I think the key thing is going right back to the very beginning of the demo. Don't run before you can walk. Pru does a lot of advanced projects. I did catch Liz as well, had just said about the wire project. I think that was the one that got cancelled, wasn't it, Pru? We had one booked in, but it got cancelled. Did we do a wire one?
I did do a wire. I did a joint wire and beginners, and that worked surprisingly well, actually. Yes. Yes, no, that was the wire was lovely, because you've got beautiful wire. Not all wire is suitable for Kumihimo, but the one you stock, the little reels of it, is absolutely perfect for all sorts of Kumihimo, but particularly for Prumihimo.
And what thickness do you tend to use for that?
I tend to use bundles, so I wouldn't use more than about 0.6, because it's very hard on your hands. I know some people do braid with thicker, and that's their personal choice. So I'm just saying what works for me. I would, if I'm using single strands, I wouldn't go any higher than 0.6, and I'd probably stick with 0.5, but I generally use bundles of thinner thread. So I would use a bundle of 6 or 7 strands of 0.3, 0.2, 0.4, any one of those as a bundle of strands, and then they're much easier on your hands, really.
And they look really nice when they come together. They braid together beautifully, don't they?
And nice and robust, because they're all together, they support each other, so it's nice and robust. It's not, sometimes you worry about using really thin wire that it will break, but of course it doesn't, because they're all supporting each other. It works really well.
Yeah, fabulous. I know we did have one cancelled due to the pandemic.
Yes, I think we were going to repeat that one. Yes, yes. Oh.
We'll get to these things, won't we? I'm sure. Yes, this has been truly amazing. I hope we've caught everybody's questions. Everyone's really, you've just inspired everybody, Prue, by the looks of it, which you always do when I speak with you as well. I often go home after we've had a chat and get my disc back out again and have another go.
Good, good. Well, that's what it's all about, inspiring each other, and in these difficult times, just keeping ourselves going. And I think being creative is more important than ever, really, in helping us to feel good about ourselves, use our time. Learning a new skill is always such a great way to cheer yourself up, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we've truly. I'll try and put us all back on so we can see our faces. Hopefully, I'll just see if that flicks through. It really has been wonderful to have our craft, and I know from people that either phone us or are connecting with us here on Facebook that it's just so nice, isn't it, to be able to do something. And I think, yes, we've all been bored and everything, and we've all had our own challenges, but this certainly having something creative to do, it keeps you busy.
Totally.
Okay, I think we've caught everything. Does anyone have anything else that I've missed? I know there's a bit of a lag getting everything through.
So Christine's saying she's got lots of beads from you from shows, and she'll be getting them out. Get them out, definitely get them out, because you'll be amazed at the different effects you can achieve just using those 4 different bead placement techniques. You can never have too many beads. I know I've said that about discs, but I do also think it about beads as well. You can never have too many beads. That's where I find my inspiration always. I see a pretty bead and I think, no, I've got to have that. What will that go with? How can I use that? And before you know it, you've made something lovely.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, more hours in the day, Juice, saying I completely I have a job to do as well, because otherwise you guys don't get any orders and we don't get new products out, and it's very boring when all I actually want to do all day is make things, and that's all people think I do all day. I don't know how you braid so quickly, Prue. You are an incredibly well, you must braid for hours and hours, but you are also a very quick braider as well. I think when you get going and create something new.
I think, like many people, I always like to have my hands busy. So I don't actually like to watch television unless my hands are doing something. So that's why braiding works so well, because you can set yourself up and then braid away and watch at the same time. But even if I'm not braiding, if I'm doing it, my hands will have to be doing something else. They just can't sit there idle. So yes, and I think many people are like that, really.
Yeah, I think when you're a crafter like we are, it's, particularly either your technique or something like macrame or regular Kumihimo is my go-to on your sofa sort of thing. Something that's compact.
Yes, definitely.
Diane's asked about Miyuki size 5 triangles, whether they work. I've not tried them on it. I don't know about
they are absolutely gorgeous on it. Yes, and in fact, yes. And have I got any samples? I don't have any samples in front of me, but yes, they are lovely. They work really well, and they've got nice big holes. I think also as a braider, you learn to be appreciative of beads that have got generous bead holes, so that you can thread them on quickly. But of course, if you've got beads that have got quite small holes, then just stiffen the end of your cord with something like super glue, brush on super glue, clear nail varnish, some sort of fray prevention product, and then let it dry and stiffen. That's the key to it, not using too much product. Let it stiffen, and then just snip the end off on a slant or straight off, because the end tends to get a little bit swollen with the product. So not too much, snip off the end, let it stiffen, and you can get through virtually any bead.
I agree, particularly an S line I find is that bit thinner than the macrame cords, which we do use a lot with the macrame cords, but the S ones are just that little bit thinner, aren't they? And they go through more beads.
Yes, true.
Wonderful. I think we've caught everything. So thank you so much, Prue. It really has, as always, been an absolute pleasure. And I'm glad we managed to get this done.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a great pleasure for me. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you. And thank you to everyone who spent time with us. It's lovely.
Thank you. And do let us know if you've got any questions, and we'll pick up any queries. And yes, do pop over and visit Prue's pages. She's got more inspiration. There's lots of braiders within there. And Riverside Beads have also got our group. We're not a specific braiding group. We are a general anything beading goes, really. But we do have a lot of Kumihimo. I will say we haven't had any Prumihimo for a while. So I look forward to this inspiration, bringing some Prumihimo back into the group now.
Good, yes.
We look forward to seeing it. Thank you so much, everybody. I shall end the call now. What we don't know is quite if this is ending it quite how we think it's going to. So bear with me. I'm going to try and end it. It worked when we did our tester. So and I think it'll end the call for you and I, Prue. So thank you so much as
So
well.
bye-bye, everyone.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.